أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا وإن الله لمع المحسنين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. I first of all offer my condolences to my beloved Edmonton community on two separate occasions. One is 30 days after the day of Ashura, and the shahadat of Bibi Sakina, salamullah alayha. Inshallah, in the Masaib, we will give this 4-year-old Ma'asuma her due respect, but one point and one discussion I wanted to have with all of you tonight was the fact that one of the most beautiful lessons that we should learn from the message of Karbala is the fact that Imam Hussain brought his family with him. And it's one thing where as the Imam, as the father, as the husband, he was in tune with the sacrifice of Allah. He knew what he had to do. He knew what he had to sacrifice as well. But in order for him to export that onto his family, be it his sons or be it his daughters or be it his wife or be it his brothers, his nephews, that's the beauty of this message and this mission. One of the most beautiful dimensions I find is the family dimension. They all came to support Imam Hussain. More importantly, they would often say that we're going to drown ourselves in Imam Hussain like he has drowned himself in God. What a powerful, powerful statement. And if you look at some of these, the stories, some of these exchanges, the conversations between him and his loved ones, they were on a different level on the plains of Karbala. They had already reached the peaks of perfection on the plains of Karbala. And, someone who's in his early 20s, late teens even, that maybe that makes sense. But you think about a 4-year-old daughter, and no doubt she showed elements of grief, of course. She showed elements of the fact that she missed her father. But for anyone to say that she didn't understand the mission of her father, I think is wrong. At the end of the day, she was a 4-year-old, and no 4-year-old should ever go through that. But the fact that Imam Hussain, in the 4 years of her precious life, was able to raise a daughter like that, to the point where she had the maturity when she had to have it in this mission. And now because of her, there is always going to be a reminder in Sham of the dhulm done on the Ahlul Bayt. Her story is amazing. And if you look at the way that Imam Hussain dealt with her throughout this tragedy, it's a message for us. And what I want to speak about tonight is raising kids, raising young kids. And so maybe, and that includes, parents to young kids, grandparents to young kids, uncles and aunts to young kids, all of them. We all have a role to play. And I say that only because I get a lot of phone calls of parents when their kids have reached early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, late teens even, and complaining about, this behavior and that behavior, their lack of worship, their lack of God consciousness, their atheist mentality, and all of that now sometimes, not always, sometimes, it kind of points to the fact that the work wasn't done in the beginning. And now there's regret that, if only we spent more time at the center, if only we enrolled our kids in madrasa, etc., etc. All these things now come into play when really, the child is now in his mid-20s or she's now in her late 20s. There's not much you can do in terms of forcing anyone at that moment. They're grown adults now. We have to now cash in, take advantage, and really kind of build the formative years during the beginning of those years. So in my talk tonight, we'll look at some principles. And I want to use a very famous 777 hadith that I still get questions about. I still get confused parents about, and although there is plenty of links out there, many ulama have touched this topic. There's literature that's written on this topic far better than me. I just want to briefly touch on that. The first point I'm going to make, and I may ruffle some feathers here, and I don't want to, is that we have to be a little bit sensitive and delicate towards those children who are under 7. Bibi Sakina was under 7. Imam Hussain, throughout this time, if you examine the way he would converse with his daughter, he never expected her to be more than a 4-year-old, nor would he place a burden too heavy for her to carry. He wouldn't explain to her why we're here. He wouldn't explain to her what would happen to him afterwards. He did his best to prepare her for the fact that he was leaving this world and that you should now kind of lean on your Aunt Zainab. And I just want to make a point here, and I don't mean to upset anybody. I myself have young kids, as many of you know, a 12-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old. And so I'm right in the thick of all this right now. Especially in these days of Muharram and stuff, sometimes I see, these videos of these little small masoom kids, reading heart-wrenching masa'ib. And I understand this is just a point that, is completely up to the parent to do. I just find it a little bit hard to imagine. We as adults can't hear the masa'ib. It's heartbreaking for us. Some actually, leave the room. Some, busy themselves with the phone, whatever the case may be. And here sometimes I find these videos of, these small masoom children reading masa'ib about Bibi Sakina or Ali Asghar, for example. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you do that to the child? There's so many dimensions to Karbala, and Karbala is with them for their entire life. Maybe now you can focus on good people versus bad people. She has her whole life to learn the Masa'ib. He has her whole life to understand the Masa'ib. I think sometimes, we kind of take away the innocence of the child. If they get nothing out of it, and just the fact that, good versus bad, that's enough. I didn't understand true Masa'ib. I didn't even understand the idea that Ashura was one day where all of the shahadat happened. That took me years to figure it out. I thought it was exactly as we would read the Masa'ib. That's how exactly the war happened. One shaheed per day. I didn't understand until later on that all of the shuhada were killed on one day, the day of Ashura. Anyways, so my point is, and again, I don't mean to impose on anyone's parenting style. If you want to invoke the love of the Ahlul Bayt and this system of azadari inside of your child, that's up to you, that's fine. But I think sometimes you have to look at your child. I've seen cases now where the child wakes up in nightmares, thinking about Bibi Sakina. She can't control herself on the day of Ashura because she thinks about, the thirst of Bibi Sakina or the arrow of Ali Asghar. And all these details now are given to a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. And so, it's not the way Imam Hussain did it on the day of Ashura with Bibi Sakina. He was very loving. He really kind of, let her down easy in terms of what's about to happen. But the details that were required, he didn't tell her about Kufa and Sham and the Zindan of Sham and the prison of Sham and how she's going to leave this world. Nothing, no. I think that there's a certain level of protection. And Islam, when you look at the way that they have the system of tarbiyat and nurturing a child, it's very, very protective of the child. Let a child be a child. And for the first 7 years of the child's life, and I ask all of you, if you have a child within the first 7 years, this idea that they're the master, as the hadith says. Hadith says that the first 7 years, they're the master in the house. The next 7 years, they're the slave. After that, they're your advisor. And inshallah, if I get to it tonight, I'll get to all three. But, if not, then at least the first 7 are very, very important. The second 7 are also very important, but it's important that we at least get through two stages very, very quickly. Sometimes the misconception is that the first 7 just means that let him or her do whatever they want. If they write on the walls, if they throw a tantrum, if they break something, if they are rude to you, for example, don't say a word. Don't discipline them. Don't teach them. There's no moment. There's no learning lesson. Wait till they're 8. Then 8, at the moment that they turn 8 or 7, that's when you get harsh with them. And that's not what 777 means at all. What it means is, for the first 7, let the child be a child. In an ideal Islamic schooling system, the Islamic educational system wouldn't even allow you to go through any formal education with a child until they are 7 or 8 years old. Right? Some of the more successful educational systems out there in the world right now, if you look at the way they teach their children, they don't burden them with math and English and vowels and sounds until maybe grade 3. Right? Before that, it's all about experiences. Right? It's all about the unschooling idea. Right? So whether that's planting a garden, or whether that's the example of invoking their creativity, or whether that's the idea of giving them some time to rest, or the idea is to not burden the child before they are 8 years old. But it doesn't mean you don't discipline. Yes, teach them. They're a sponge at that moment. Right? They're a sponge at that moment, and one that really can absorb whatever you want them to absorb. Okay, and in the process, however, it's important that we create the idea of taking advantage of that window that you have to teach them. The first 14 years is a window of teaching. That's when you really have to give them whatever you can. They're accepting it, they're digesting it, they see you as the only source of everything in this world right now. When they become 15, 16, 18, and their intellect begins to kind of form, then they start to understand certain concepts that they didn't understand when they were 9 or 10 years old. Right? And if we gave them the right teaching and the right tarbiyat during the first 14 years, then when they're 15, 18, 21, facing the various problems of shaitan and the various nuances of this dunya, they're able to use the tools when they were 9, 10, 11 years old to kind of get through what they're going through in their early 20s. It's hard. It's not easy, right? Raising children today is not easy. It's nothing like when I grew up. And any of you who are from my generation, late 30s, early 40s, our parents weren't as involved as we are with our children. I have 3 kids. All of them are in school, and I remember last year my mother came to stay with me for a couple of days. Sometimes she comes because the kids miss Dadi and miss Grandma. So she came and she was here during the week, and the kids, we have a routine, right? The kids get home by 4:30, a little bit of free time, and then at 5:30 they begin their homework, and then dinner, and then my kids are in bed by 7:30. Just lock it down. At 7:30 you're out. That's it. That's when my work starts, at 7:30. Anyways. So she's watching, my mom's watching my wife and I doing homework with the kids, for example. Both of us were running from here to there, this project, that science fair, this book report, signing this, doing this. And she said, Beta, we didn't do any of that with you guys. She's in grade 1, she's in grade 6, for example. I don't remember you guys getting homework. I said, yeah. It's not like that anymore, right? So we live in a different era. And because we live in a different era, the approach has to be very different. We can't fall back on what we know or fall back on what our parents, God bless them, did when we were younger. They did what they could, but that can't be repeated now. It's not a cut and paste system, right? So it's a very difficult time to raise kids, no doubt about it. Shouldn't deter young couples from having kids. No way. Children are a blessing for Allah, right? There is more beauty and more blessing than there are challenges. But nonetheless, right, if you're out there and you're struggling as a parent, please take a deep breath and know that everyone is in this game. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is trying to get through the right time. We look at other parents, oh, they have it all together. Look at them. They have crafts, then they post those crafts, and they're doing Muharram activities. I'm not doing anything with my kid. Sometimes all you have to do is make sure that your kid is alive in 24 hours. Make sure that they're sleeping, make sure that they're fed, and that's it. And that's all you could do. That's all you can. Maybe one noha, let's say, on your device, or maybe that's it, right? Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. There's so many things out there, so many crafts and DIYs and this and that, and learning how to do this, and puppet shows, and you don't need to be overwhelmed as a parent. You do the best you can, but know that right now, if you have a child at home between the age of 0 and 14, there's a window there right now. The window is wide open. You have to now teach them as much as you can. Once the window begins to shut, then all you can do is advise them and suggest to them and watch them sometimes as they fall. My parents out there who have kids who are in their 20s, their 30s, let's say. My grandparents out there, for example. You're watching your kids now who are parents now, and you know that they're headed for a road bump, a speed bump, a pothole, a crack in the sidewalk. They're going to trip and fall, and you want to scream, look, cross the road or jump over, and you have to sometimes watch them fall. That's later on in life. But in the beginning now, not the case at all. Not the case at all, right? At least in the first 7 years, right? Make them individuals who are absolutely aware of their own existence, aware of what they're doing. Okay? Now remember, in this first stage, from 0 to 7, graduality is important. Everything has to be a very gradual process. Okay? This is not an overnight fix. Whatever you're trying to establish in your child, it's going to take a lot of time to do that. Okay? I want to share with you one hadith, and I don't really usually read off of devices here, but I'll take advantage of the online world and kind of read off of my laptop here in front of me that you can't see. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says a very beautiful tradition. He says, Rahamallahu walidayna a'anan waladahuma ala birrihima. May Allah have mercy on those parents who assist their young children in being good. Who assist their young children in being good. Okay? These children from 0 to 7, they learn by imitation. And, these kids, their entire world are their parents. Or in some cases, their parents. My salams to the single moms out there and the single parents out there. May Allah bless you and give you more strength to do what you're doing. You're doing an incredible job, and God sees it, and we all see it. May Allah bless all of you. And you don't get the recognition that you deserve, nor do I think we have enough services in our communities for our single moms, especially today. And yet I see them produce amazing, pious kids. It's incredible. Khair. A quick shout out for my single moms out there. They learn by imitation. And their entire world are their parents. Okay. I said this before. I'll give you examples, okay? Young son of yours, you have a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, right? Usually, sons look up to their dads as superheroes, right? And then girls up to their moms, right? For everything, right? And I don't mean to be all stereotypical, but that's usually how it goes. Obviously there's a special connection between dads and daughters and moms and sons. But when it comes to imitation, it's usually, for example, when I wear my black distasha, for example, right? My son Hussain, who's 5 years old, will run upstairs and find anything black and wear it down and say, "Oh, Baba, we're brothers." I said, "Yeah, we're brothers." If I put on my hat ready to recite a majlis, he'll go and he'll find his hat, even though he'll be upstairs and I'll be right now downstairs in my studio here. Right? So all of this is there, and it's all about imitation. Right? He'll sit beside me. Right? If I wear a t-shirt, he wears a t-shirt. If I'm out there barbecuing, he's out there kind of doing stuff. right? If I'm sitting there trying to put batteries in, he wants to open up. So basically everything, his entire world is me. I am his superhero. Everything I do has to be right and correct. And I have to realize as a father of a 5-year-old that this is the window that's very, very wide open. I can either make him or break him. It's a lot of pressure, I understand, right? And ultimately you won't know, or we won't know what damage or what good we've done with our kids until, they're in their 20s. But all we can do is do our level best. But in the first 7 years of their life, there are two aspects. One is gradual, and the second is imitation. Sometimes I think our parents some of our parents, not our parents, but parents of today, are delusional. In the sense that, how do I create pious kids? How do I make sure my kids are God-centric, Syed? Please give us some du'as. Please give us some tips. How can we make sure that, my kid is pious and reading namaz? I really want to read namaz. And then I ask him, the best way for you to raise God-pious children is to be God-pious yourself. This is not some big calculus equation. It's very simple, actually. The input will match the output will match the input. If a kid sits there and plays with instruments his whole life, he's going to end up becoming a musician. If a kid sits there and reads, and plays with the tasbih and the muhr and sees the Quran and hears the adhan and hears the nohas and hears the du'as, he'll come out himself as a worshipper of God. It's very simple. Sometimes I think the parents of today are banking on a miracle and not giving the child a chance to become a God-centric person. In what basis, on what proof are you going to expect a child now to come out of this household to be God-centric, right? Music is blasting, obscene language, fighting and arguing, the adhan comes and goes, there's no salat. Muharram comes and goes, there's no dhikr of Imam Hussain, right? There's no Quran at all. There might be a few names here and there. There might be a few events that we have just to kind of stamp the house as a Muslim house. But really, in terms of those base building and root planting years, there's nothing. And then at 16, 17, 21, 25, you call someone like me and say, oh, my kid's off the track. What did you expect? What did you expect? Now, it's one thing where I've given everything. I've also seen that. Amazing parents, pious parents, the best Islamic environment, and they come out to be somebody who's off the path or who's struggling. And that's why up in the Quran, the story of Nabi Nuh, for example, Ya Nuh innahu laysa min ahlik, innahu amalu ghayr salih. Oh, no, he's not from your ahl, your son, that you are now searching for as the adab and the flood comes down. Where's my son? Where's my son? He's not from your ahl. He might be your biological son, but he's not following the same lineage and the same path as you. In fact, he is a manifestation of an act that's not righteous. Okay? That's a father of a son that's the prophet of God. As great as parents as we can be, none of us are prophets of God, right? So it happens to the best of us, happens to the best of everybody. But at least give the child a fighting chance. So in these first 7 years, we're not going to let him run amok all over the house. Stop him and say, look, crayons are made for the paper, not for the wall. If you took out a half a glass of milk, finish the half a glass of milk. We're not going to waste. There's no waste happening. Okay, Baba, okay, Mama, and they understand. Okay? But when we expect more than we can, for example, there are parents I see, Allahu Akbar, and they grab the 5-year-old beside them on their janamaz, and then they're pushing them down for ruku. Those kind of things are not necessary, my brother. Don't do that's when you're expecting more, right, than what they can give you. Let them play. Let them be. Let them be bored. Let them kind of, they don't have to have every minute of their day scheduled. Okay? If you're asking them to clean their room, for example, and they get, halfway through it and they're tired. Don't push them. It's okay. That's only for the first 7 years now. I'm not talking about your 16-year-old daughter who can't make her bed. No, at that moment, make your bed, homie. Like, come on. It's too much. So that's the first 7 years. Okay? One point I want to make here. I've made it everywhere I've gone in this Muharram because I just see a pattern here that's very, very disturbing for me. And the pattern is that how we introduce God to this 5-year-old, 6-year-old etc., etc. And the one point that I really have kind of, made a theme of mine this Muharram is introducing a God of love and compassion. I've had a couple of Zoom events up and down this Muharram with a very small group of youth who are aged, let's say, for example, late teens to late 20s. And at least that group, about 20, 25 of them, they were just angry at the fact that God was never introduced to us properly. God of fear, the God of crushing the bones, the God of serpents in my grave, the God of the hellfire, the God of burning castles, the God of punishment, the God of hanging from my hair, the God that won't accept my salat, the God that, all these things one by one when you are 11, 12, 14, 18. And now at 21, when the kid wakes up one day and says, you know what, forget God. I don't want to worship God. He has it out for me. He'll never accept me. He'll never be happy with me. So why should I even waste my time? Why am I going to affect this world and for sure I'm going to get it in that world, and now I lose both worlds? Let me at least get one world. It all stems from the fact that if any of you, listen to me right now, a parent of a young child, a teacher of a young child, a grandparent of a young child, even an uncle, even a sibling of a young child, please do that child a favor. At least in the first 7 years, introduce God to be a God of love and compassion. Flip the script, right? Make sure that you understand that every khair, every good in his world, in her world, if the ice cream is tasty, it's God. If that toy makes you so happy, it's God. If it's a beautiful sunny day, it's God. If you love your new shoes, it's God. If you slept so good, it's God. If you love your new toothbrush, oh my God, Baba, I love my toothbrush, it's God. It is God. He's everything. He's everywhere. He's hadir, he's nadir. But from that moment now, plant the seed of the God of mercy and the God of love and the God of compassion. Later on, when they're able to digest certain realities, you can speak about the justice portion of God. But initially, it's all love, all love, all love. In this regard, the Christian church has it right. They really present a God of love. In fact, they present a religion of love to their followers, right? Albeit sometimes I think it's void of the justice element, but nonetheless, in the beginning now, these kids now feel this love for Prophet Jesus, love for God himself. Whereas here, it's all about fear and scared. If you don't do this, God will do this to you. And, okay, I have to do it. And I get it, you're trying to invoke a slave and master relationship, but you can do that on the basis of love. Because the law of love is that you don't want to upset your beloved. If you create the script and the culture where now you're in love with God, then that love will dictate to you that you don't want to upset your beloved. So instead of slave and master, change it to lover and beloved. Okay? And that happens, as fast as possible. My 5-year-old is asking me about God. Is he invisible? Where is he right now? Why can't I see him? So they're curious, and they're developing very, very quickly. Don't underestimate the mind of a 6, 7-year-old. It's crucial. The second stage, 8 to 14, to me is the most crucial. I don't know why. To me, it is the most crucial. Those are the years where akhlaq is taught, or formal education is ready. They're ready to be challenged. They're ready for limitations. They're ready for stricter discipline. They're ready for a lot of things. Okay? And this is where you need to challenge your child to achieve a balance between secular religion, secular knowledge, and religious knowledge. Although all knowledge is accepted in Islam, provided it takes us back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've made this point before, I think in Edmonton as well last year, in my visit, that education is not subject-based in Islam, it's niyat-based. Education is not subject-based, it's niyat-based. Meaning what? That if your niyat and your intention in this subject is to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to serve mankind, then that might be more of a pious road than even those who are sitting in Qawm al-Najaf right now. I tell you. Story I've told before, young doctor in New Jersey, a place that I frequent a lot, and I've been following this kid's movement from when he was in university, and he would bounce ideas of well, this is what I want to do, and I said okay, and then all through his MCAT and all through it, and now mashallah he's an established doctor, and I saw him literally 2 years ago, and I asked him how's it going. He said that my religion, my faith has skyrocketed ever since I have been practicing medicine. And he told me a story how in the OR he lost a patient. And for the first time he saw death happening in front of him. This man came into the OR alive and didn't come back out alive. On his table, he was the main surgeon. He had to call death. Time of death, for example, is whatever. And he said, I've been to many funerals, Malana. I've been to many Barsis majlises and this soyam and that, but I've never seen death that up close. It was so real to me, and it was a moment of God for me. I was like, I had this awakening almost. Now, one would think that, okay, becoming a doctor isn't a religious path. But if he found God and his path now is increased, then that absolutely becomes a path of God. There are those who go to Qawm al-Najaf and find shaitan there, I'm sorry. There are those who go to the house and come back actually the awliya of shaitan, not the awliya of Allah. Okay, so knowledge at that moment is important. That's why, at the age of 8 now, you begin to kind of, steer them towards understanding and learning. And there is an abundant amount of resources that didn't happen when I was 8 years old. There was nothing there when I was 8. I would tell the story. I would go on Thursday nights to my center, and the dua would be in Arabic, no PowerPoint or no translation on the screen, and the speech would be in Urdu. Both languages I didn't know. Now, of course, I love both of them. But back then, I sat there as an 8-year-old, just say, okay, is it time? Can I run around now? Is it time for tea now? Is it, I would basically know that if the Mullah started crying, okay, they're almost done. That's how it was growing up. Now, there's all of these different organizations that are doing a stellar job in educating our children, making it very visual, making it animated, stories and books and everything is out there, and begin that process as they learn to read now. In their grade 2 and grade 3, etc., they perfect their reading. Make sure that when they're reading, at night, it's not just good night moon, right? Give them, for example, the story of Nabi Sulaiman, for example, the story, for example, of Nabi Yunus, for example, and these small little books that are available up and down North America. Begin to challenge them. Begin to, they thrive on limits. They thrive on discipline. They thrive on a schedule. Sometimes we're a little bit scared now to discipline our child. Discipline them. Let them know these are your limitations. Now, one speech I gave in the first 10 days in Toronto, the idea that, discipline them, show them you're the authority, but don't strip them of their respect and their self-worth. Right? Don't attack them personally. Just sit there and purify their actions. That what you did, not who you are, but what you did was wrong. Fix what you did, and you will now become a better person. Right? All these things they can absorb at 8 or 9. Don't coddle them. Challenge them. But again, read their capacity. If they're not able to get to that point, then at that moment, just leave it. Right? But this is not the 7-year-old that you knew last year. There's going to be a leap you'll find in their maturity. Okay, so in this stage of 8 to 14 now, it's very, very important that you understand that they are now going to be very curious. And that curiosity will lead them to a better understanding of God. Okay? And we are now dealing with a very curious generation. It can't be like how our parents dealt with it. They became annoyed. They became frustrated because they didn't have that culture themselves of asking the questions. Whatever we're doing inside the house, inside the masjid, just believe. Don't ask me why. That's it. I have so many older parents calling me and saying, "Kya hai ye Maulana?" All the kids ask is why. That's it. Alama Jawadi. Allah. Have mercy on his soul. Very famous Urdu alim. he would, he would frequent our center a lot, and I would always benefit from his lectures. He'd say that, this Western generation, this is back now, talking about 30 years almost, this Western world now, the kids nowadays, they come into the house, they say three things: hi, why, bye. Hi, why, bye. Beautifully said, he said. Right? But then he followed that up by saying, look, that why is beautiful. It's curiosity. And they'll ask you and ask you and ask you until, you're done. But that's what will lead them towards God, is that why. And if we squash that from now, all of their doubts, all their questions will be left unanswered. And doubt, as you know, becomes disbelief very easily. Shak becomes kufr like that. And so we have to be able to, as parents, be patient now. Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Because eventually when they become 15, 16 years old and they have questions about God, you want to make sure that door is open for them. That you want to make sure that you have showed them that level of confidence that, look, my dad or my mom are not going to shush me when it comes to my questions. And if they don't have the answer, they'll find out the answer for me. Nothing worse than a child at 18 having these questions, fundamental questions about God, and it's left unanswered, or he's left or she's left to answer it on their own. That's when all sorts of problems happen. So sorry, I'm throwing a lot at you guys tonight, and I want to make sure that I'm in my 45-minute range here. I have 10 minutes left. I want to read Masaib as well. The first 14 years of your child's life is crucial. Now, if you have a child who's in his 20s now, and I've made you depressed, and oh my God, we never did any of that, we didn't know, don't kill yourself. You did the best you could under the circumstances. Okay? There are parents who have to work. There has to be a double income in the house to make that house run. With that, of course, comes the idea that the child is either in daycare or whatever, or at grandma's, whatever the case may be, and that guilt that the parents feel causes them to overcompensate with the child, right? And while they think that they're plugging up holes, in fact, they're making the holes bigger. Anyways, you did the best you could. I'm talking about those parents, my generation, who have these young children, and they are like uncultivated land, Imam Ali says. You now are the cultivator of that land. You're one of them, right? The teachers and the media and their friends are all, of course, others, but you are the main ones. It's a very beautiful hadith about questions from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. He says that, knowledge and ilm is in a room, it's locked, and the keys to that room are questions. Right? So, you may not have all the answers, and nobody has all the answers sometimes for these kids, but create a culture of accepting the fact that if you have a question, your question is of utter importance to me as a parent. Okay, all of these tools, guys, later on in their life comes into play huge, I can't tell you. So many of my kids that I speak to, 23, 24, if my parents did this, if only my parents. Now, sometimes it's a cop-out, it's an excuse. I get it. They're angry, they're jaded, they're wounded, and I have to get them to get past all this stuff. But sometimes it is the idea that, we have to give them a fighting chance in this ever-changing, destructive, morally bankrupt society. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about Edmonton or Canada or the West. The entire globe now is moving towards moral corruption and moral decay. We see it in every corner of the globe, do we not? Of course we do. There's no advancement of the human being. Yeah, our phones are smarter, our appliances are smarter, our cars, let's say, can drive themselves, fine. But we as a human being inside have regressed, if you ask me. And we've now begun to resemble ever so slowly the era before the Prophet arrived in Medina and Mecca. The era of Jahiliyyah. Idol worshipping, disrespecting of women, bloodshed, all these things were the main components of the Jahiliyyah era. And this is the era that a child at 5, 6, this masoom, innocent child now is beginning to slowly enter this world. Like I overheard my 5-year-old talking about coronavirus, Baba. Does that mean that we have to be in quarantine? What 5-year-old? My heart broke. Like no 5-year-old should know what COVID-19 means, right? No 5-year-old should know what quarantining means. That's not his job. His job is to sit there and build the highest tower of Lego. His job is to make sure when he colors, it's inside the lines. That's it. Don't worry about COVID-19 and quarantining. That's up to us, the adults. But this society now is forcing our kids to grow up so fast. As parents, we have to now rescue them from this. And if that means you protect them, then so be it. Talk about bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and COVID-19. Create your own bubble around your kids as well. Let them be a child. At the same time now, when they're ready for more, give them more. Give them more. And give them the right more, inshallah. You look at, again, Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam with Bibi Sakina. He was so loving, so compassionate. And that was part of the musibat. Asri Ashur, Imam Hussain now. Gets on his horse. After Bibi Zainab mounts him on the horse, about to ride into the Maidan of Karbala, and the horse doesn't move. He tries everything, Imam Hussain, the horse doesn't move, lowers his head, one tear rolling down his face, almost as if to tell Imam Hussain that there's somebody stopping me from moving underneath me. Imam Hussain looks, and there's a 4-year-old Sakina clutching the leg of her Baba's horse, saying, "Where are you taking my Baba? Where are you taking my Baba?" Imam Hussain gets off that horse, picks up his 4-year-old, hugs his 4-year-old. I used to always hear growing up that Baby Sakina would sleep on the chest of Imam Hussain, would sleep on the chest of Imam Hussain. I didn't quite understand that till I had my own daughter. And there would be nights where she would be restless and she couldn't sleep. Until when? Until I would pick her up and her head would rest on my shoulder and then she would fall back asleep. And all I could keep thinking about was this moment. Now, Asri Ashur, Baba, why can't we go back to Medina, Baba? Why do we have to stay here, Baba? What if I get sleepy? Where will I sleep, Baba? Imam Hussain does his level best to explain to her what has to happen. And then she begins to talk to Zuljana and says, "Hey, Zuljana, my Baba, my Baba is very thirsty. My Baba is very tired. If you can, please find a little bit of water from Furat and give him some water. If not, then find a place of shade and let him rest in that shade." At that moment now, she says her final alvida and khudafis to Imam Hussain. I would say this to Sakina: enjoy that one moment that you have with your father. The next time you see your father in the prison of Sham, the reports say, Sheikh Abbas Qummi narrates that Baby Sakina fell asleep one night in the prison of Sham. In her dream now, her Baba is standing in front of her. Her Baba seems very distressed. "What's wrong, Baba? You seem distressed. You seem a little bit stressed out." He says, "You know how much I miss you. You know how much I love you. You know how my home, wherever I am, is not content without you. I miss you, my daughter. I miss you, my dear." He begins to cry. She begins to cry. She wakes up in the middle of the night. She begins to panic now. "I can smell my Baba. I just saw my Baba. I can hear my Baba. Where is my Baba? Where is my Baba?" She begins to cry. Zainab begins to cry. Kulthum begins to cry. The walls of the Zindan of Sham begin to cry. Yazid said, "What is this commotion?" Yazid, "It's the daughter of Hussain. What does she want? Bring her the head." Imam Hussein's head is brought to Baby Sakina. Baby Sakina now is holding the head. "Hey Baba, who is the one that put all these scars on your face? Hey Baba, who is the one that separated your head from your body?" She clutches the head of her Baba, begins to cry and cry until there is no sound. In the morning, Bibi Zainab says, Sakina, Sakina, there's no response from the Zindan of Sham. "Hey Imam Sajjad, go check on Sakina. She's not responding to anything that I'm saying." Imam Sajjad enters the Zindan of Sham, lying there, clutching the head of her father. Inna lillahi wa inna سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept this qaleel ibadat, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to weaken the hands of the enemies of humanity, to strengthen the oppressed and the mustaza'afin all of the world. And finally, Allah, we have one dua on this 30th night after the demise of Imam Hussain and the shahadat on the plains of Karbala, that you allow us to rise and stand beside the Imam of our time when he comes, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.